Hey guys, Drifter here. Welcome to Modern Warfare in Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be reviewing the AK47 Assault Rifle. I've decided to do a selective weapons series this year, and instead of attempting to cover every single weapon in the game, I'm going to cover weapons that I either like or feel deserve more attention. Exclusive Ace has chosen the exact opposite path, and he's going to review the most popular guns. So what I'm generally going to do today is try to give you M4 and 725 alternatives, and I think the AK47 could be one of them. I don't think it's any doubt in any of our minds that the M4 is the dominant weapon in the game, and the AK47, no matter how you kit it or build it, isn't going to be taking the M4 down for the best gun title anytime soon, but the AK is just a very fun and reasonable alternative with a lot of gunsmith options that allows you to kit it for a lot of very unique scenarios that other weapons like, say, the M4 might not be able to handle. So this one is all about customization, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the last half of the episode. But in the first half, let's talk about just raw statistics for the AK-47. Its damage profile is very simple. It deals 35 damage up close, and it decreases down to 32 damage as far as I or Exclusive Ace could test. To the best of our knowledge, at extreme ranges, it only goes down to 32 damage. So it's an extremely high damage weapon and an extremely long range weapon. There may be ranges on ground war maps where this could decrease down to 25 or 20 or something like that, but it's not something that I was able to test for, so in my opinion, I don't think it's something that you guys are going to experience very often. It does have some unique multipliers. If you get a headshot, that's 1.6 times damage, which is huge, and if you hit somebody in the upper chest, that's 1.2 times damage, which is actually higher than headshot multipliers have been in previous Call of Duty games. So those numbers are going to change a little bit and look a little bit more like a 3-shot kill weapon. It'll be 2 shots to the head at any range, actually. As long as you get headshots, 2 will drop. They could be on top of the skyscrapers. But for the most part, AK-47 is always going to be a 3-shot kill at any range, just so long as you're hitting either body or head. Now, if you're hitting arms and feet and legs and ankles and stuff like that, it might be a 4-shot kill. However, as long as you're hitting body, you can cross-map people on Grobnik, and it is going to be a 3-shot kill in my experience. I've not found a range at which this doesn't work. So you've got a very, very consistent 3-shot kill weapon. Its rate of fire is less than spectacular, though. It only shoots at 550 rounds per minute, which in my opinion is kind of slow for a full auto assault rifle, not only for Call of Duty as a franchise, but also for Modern Warfare as a game. Rate of fire is not one of the strong suits of the AK, which means that despite the great damage, time to kill is going to be on the slower side of rifles, especially for close range, which is typically how we would calculate this, but it gets way more competitive over distance. At long ranges, if you're hitting your shots, this will have a much better and more competitive time to kill with the 5.56 rifles, if not in some cases exceeding or besting them. But up close, the 5.56s are just going to be a lot easier to use and have a faster time to kill. One of the major weaknesses of the AK-47 rifle is that it has a slow aim down sights time and a slower sprint out time than the other assault rifles because it's such a big heavy weapon. And that's one of the things I do like that Infinity Ward did in this game, is that they took the 7.62 and 5.56 rifles, their overall size, weight, bulk, design, and gave them different handling statistics instead of all of the rifles being the same. So this one will handle somewhat slower than the other rifles. And one of the most important factors for this one, since there's very limited attachments that you can use to modify your sprint out speed, is the aim down sights time. Besides, you'll be posted up a lot. I know how you guys play. So reducing your aim down sights time is mission critical for making a good AK-47, so let's take a look at the attachments that affect that. Well, the ones that affect it in a positive manner. We all know that we could put giant barrels and stocks and sniper scopes and mess it up. But let's look at how to make it fast. The base AK-47 has a very slow aim down sights time of 366 milliseconds, which was just brutal. I did not expect it to be that bad when I measured it. The skeleton stock had no change at 366. Adding no stock to it dropped it down to 266. Adding the FPS close quarters stock dropped it down to 316, so there was improvement there, but not as much as no stock. And the stippled grip tape had a very minor improvement. That's about 2 frames right there overall, and that's if my capture card isn't doing something goofy with off rounding. So if you want to increase or decrease your aim down sights time, the best thing you can do is put on no stock and the stippled grip tape, and that'll take it down to be much more in line with the other rifles. The other ones aren't particularly helpful in my opinion. Personally, I prefer to have no stock on the AK47 because it makes the aim down sights a lot faster, and it's one of the few attachments that also lowers my sprint out time, which is very poor on this weapon. It's not particularly necessary to measure in this case because there's not really any other attachments that help you a whole lot in this regard, so that is the way to go, in my opinion. That's one of the builds I'll be recommending later. But you'll notice that when you equip this, it says it hurts your recoil control. Recoil control is one of the most frustrating aspects of the AK, so let's take a look at its effects. This is the AK-47 base AK-47 spread pattern on the left, and on the right-hand side is with the no stock attachment. You can see that yes, the no stock attachment does slightly increase recoil, but overall it's not that bad. It could be a lot worse, and in my opinion, getting the faster, snappier aim down sights is worth that increase in recoil. The base recoil on the AK-47 is of course very high and also unusual. I don't think you need an in-depth episode to know that. I think all of you that have used the weapon for more than 5 minutes would know that the recoil is very high, but I did notice one unusual thing about it while I was testing it out and just sort of looking at screenshots, and that's that the first 2 shots on this weapon actually have very little kick. In most instances, the first 2 shots are on top of each other or very close to side by side. Very rarely is the second shot higher than the first, and then the next 3 to 5 shots will kick like a mule and then it settles. So what I think they've done is they've added a sort of fixed or very low randomness on the first 5 shots, and then the last whatever you have in your magazine is going to be much more like Call of Duty recoil. But it's important to note that the first 2 you can get on point very quickly, kind of like maybe Counter-Strike, and it's more often 1. But the important recoil changing attachment is your barrel length. That's one of the most important ones in my opinion, and choosing a barrel length in a stock is really what's kind of make or break for your AK. So let's take a look at the longer barrels on the AK. The one on the left is with the 8-inch super compact AK-74U barrel, and you can see that in that case, it actually does mess up your first shots, and with your first shots, they're no longer side by side, but instead they're kicking upward very, very rapidly. The one on the right is with the 23-inch ultra-heavy Romanian RPK barrel that has the integrated foregrip, and you can see that the cluster is much, much tighter, but you also see the same pattern in that the first 2 shots are pretty close together. Then we've got 3, 4, 5, and then we have a sort of normal Call of Duty spread pattern. The point of all of this is that when you're kitting your AK-47, barrel length is one of the most important things to consider because that's going to change your recoil, which is overall the most difficult gameplay aspect to control. The gun kicks upward, it has a low predictability outside of the first couple shots, it has a low reliability, so controlling vertical recoil is key to building a better AK-47. And that's the exact opposite of the M4, and the M4 you're primarily looking for recoil stabilization, which is your left-right kick. This one you're wanting to keep that vertical more in line. So the attachments to consider are longer barrels, which are fantastic. Compensator, in my opinion, is the best one to put on the tip of your weapon at the end of the barrel. The Ranger foregrip is very, very nice for this. I run the Ranger foregrip on my AKs as much as possible. It has the most noticeable, other than barrels, the most noticeable impact on recoil, and it will, vertical recoil, and it will also slightly reduce the horizontal recoil. And I put the rubberized grip on there because it says it reduces vertical recoil, and I put an asterisk by it. I can't measure that. I can't tell that it's reducing my vertical recoil. However, it may be one of those scalars or multipliers that stacks better with other things, but that's kind of why it's way down there at the bottom. Another interesting thing to consider about this weapon is that the 7.62mm rounds maintain damage over range better, and they penetrate walls better than the 5.56mm rounds in Modern Warfare, at least. I know that the real gun people will come in and tell me how this is totally wrong and backwards, but if you want to do long range and you want to wall bang people, 7.62 is definitely the way to go over 5.56 in this game. And the last hard stat that we're going to consider before we move into our kitting section of this episode is reload time. It has an empty reload time of 1.38 seconds, a full reload time that's significantly faster at 1.17 seconds, and with sleight of hand you can cut either of these in half. That's because you no longer have to, pull the bolt back. If you still have at least one bullet chambered, you just stick your new mag in there. For assault rifles, this is actually on the faster side of things, which is interesting to consider, but I guess it's just because I don't know how many of you have used a real AK, but they're very simple to reload and handle, and I think they designed it like this in the game. So it's one of the faster reloading rifles, and I think sleight of hand is a very nice gun perk to put on there so that you don't have very much downtime at all. One of the things that I wanted to do in today's video is to demonstrate just how rugged and durable a real-life AK-47 is, since I have access to that and many more things here in Texas. Unfortunately, if I showed you real guns, then YouTube would hit me with the big fat demonetization yellow dollar signs, which I don't need in my life. So instead of that, I'll just tell you that one of the unique things about the AK-47 in real life is that it's incredibly rugged, incredibly durable, nearly indestructible, and that's why it's one of the most popular weapons in the world. It rarely jams, rarely fails, and it's got many flaws from an accuracy standpoint, from a design standpoint, but the thing that holds true over time is it's cheap and durable, which reminds me of an ASTRO product. Many of you are familiar with the ASTRO A10 headsets. They're only $60 compared to the $200 for the A40s. They have almost the same sound quality, not quite as good, but one of their unique things is that they are nearly indestructible. So today, for my sponsored segment, I'm going to try to horribly destroy one of my sponsor's products and see if I can break it. So once you've got them unboxed, they look like this. Relatively simple, relatively durable. And I've got it hooked up to my phone so that every time we do a test, we'll be able to see if it works. So let's go ahead and pop this out, and I'll show you the very simple one first of that. So that is my A10 headsets, and I'll bend them like this. Jessica, if you want to get a nice angle at our dog toy pile, let's see if we can break them this way. Oh no, I dropped them! Next test is called the girlfriend test. My wife, who's one of the heaviest people that I know, is going to be taking a seat on the headsets, so let's go ahead and plop on down and give it a little wiggle, and let's stand back up and see what's left. Oh my god, I absolutely can't believe they're not perfectly flat. Doing a little animal testing here. Apparently he just absolutely hates the song that's playing. Oh no, I have butterfingers and I dropped my new headsets down the stairs. Let's see if this still works. It's still working, okay. Well, we are clearly gonna have to up our game in order to break these headsets. All right, let's try the punting test. Ow, son of a mother! God, that hurt. Oh no, I dropped them on concrete.
They bounced off the chair.
Well, I'll do it again. Oh no, I've dropped them on concrete. So this is the water test. I'm your drunk uncle on Thanksgiving. Oh no, I spilled Coke all over your headsets. That's pretty wet overall. I'm gonna dry them off and we'll see if they still play. Now we're on Kill a Kill. It still works. This segment's gonna go on forever, you know that? We've had it in the freezer, in the ice. Yikes, that, since mostly steel, it got really cold. Pretty sure ASTRO didn't design it for this, but this is the dryer test. And let's get it going.
A few moments later.
One thing we can't do is let them get too hot because some plastics are toxic. If the BPA or whatever their composition is melts, it can get very dangerous, especially for pets. So we're just gonna let them run for like a minute or two so they get banged up, but not super hot. And well, they're not exactly cool, that's for certain. Moment of truth. We've done the freezer and the dryer here. Son of a... It's still going. It's still... Can you hear this? This Kill a Kill? It's still going. We're gonna have to try even harder to break these. All right, so we call this one the cowboy test. So now it's the moment of truth after all of that. And let's see if the A10s still function. So, no matter what I do, I can't seem to break them. So I think it's time to take this whole thing to the next level. You guys ready for this? I kind of feel bad that I literally can't break them because you guys will say this is fake and that you just wanted to look good for the sponsor. So I'm gonna try a little bit harder, and we're gonna call this one the Irresponsible Tesla Owner Test. And if this doesn't break them, I literally quit.
I think you broke them.
Did they finally break?
Yes.
Oh. I probably should have ran over the other side because I bet it would actually still work. Don't worry about that piece. What's interesting is that the integral part of the headset actually doesn't seem that damaged. Like, I bet
if you soldered those wires back together, it would probably still work. The mic sure doesn't work anymore.
So this is the end result of running over the headsets with the Tesla. Clearly the plastic didn't make it, the steel was unaffected. I probably should have ran over the other side where it doesn't plug in because I've kind of destroyed the plug here. I assume that it will no longer play. However, for being hit by a car, if you take a look at the internals, they're actually in surprisingly good condition. I mean, most of the wiring and the chipset and everything is still in place. And if I had to guess, I would guess that if I were to resolder this wire back onto the chipset, that the entire product would probably still work, or at least the left speaker. So I feel a little bit bad having finally destroyed the A10s. It's a little wasteful in a way. I was building up nostalgic value with my indestructible headsets that are covered in dog hair and frozen and burnt and dropped and scratched. But the point of this is, A10 headsets are fantastic and they're among the most durable headsets on the planet. You can do pretty much anything to them except run them over with the car and they'll work fine, and they are products that I strongly recommend. If you guys want a headset that will stand the test of time, that can't be sit on, that can't be destroyed, that can't easily be damaged, and will be with you until the next generation of consoles, then I would highly encourage you to pick up an ASTRO A10 headset. Very, very reliable little products, and of course do so by clicking the link in the description because that will give you 5% off, and it makes me look like a fantastic sponsor. So let's move on to the rest of this in-depth episode, which is primarily about how to build your AK-47. There's one attachment that I wanted to talk about, the unique bayonet attachment. This does make your melee faster, and it turns your melee into a one-hit kill instead of two, which I initially thought this would be like a really great attachment. It would be like the old World at War bayonet where you could poke people from like 30 feet away. Unfortunately, the bayonet doesn't increase your melee range at all. You still have to be effectively point blank in their face to get any sort of melee range at all. And it isn't any better than just carrying a throwing knife, because in Modern Warfare, if you carry a throwing knife, which is why I so often do so, you get the one-hit melee because you can just hit your knife and you can, throw it, but that counts for any weapon. I don't know why I would use a gun attachment or a gun perk for something that does a worse job than just having a throwing knife, so I really don't recommend the bayonet unless you just plan to cheese people and have fun, but the animation isn't so unique that I think a lot of people are even going to notice. Let's talk about the ammo conversion on this weapon, and I talked a lot more about this in the Secret Weapons episode where I talk about the AK-74U and RPK, and those are the builds we're primarily going to focus on here. I linked that below. It's one of my better episodes. But if you put the lower caliber ammo on there, the 5.49 millimeter rounds, it'll change the damage to 26 flat at all ranges, so you're always dealing 26 damage. However, there are chest and head multipliers such that if you shoot somebody in the chest, it'll deal 31 damage. You'll note that that doesn't get you any less shots to kill for whatever reason, and if you shoot people in the head, you'll be dealing 42 damage, which can only get you one less shot to kill. So it doesn't really seem to matter where you're going to be hitting people. I would really expect a lot of 4-shot kills at pretty much any range when you put this attachment on. It does increase your rate of fire up to 666 rounds per minute, which is Satan's number. And unfortunately, when you look at it mathematically, the overall time to kill and the overall range, time to kills over range, are lower with this attachment. Even up close, this is a worse attachment than just having regular AK-47 bullets in your gun. When you're fully done converting your weapon into the AK-74U, you'll put the 8-inch barrel on it, you'll have no stock, you'll have the lower caliber ammo, you'll have a lot of things that make your weapon very, very snappy, but in my opinion, this build still kicks too much to be a proper SMG, and I don't recommend it because it murders your range and overall time to kill and lethality potential in order to just basically get a lot of speed. In this case, the trade-off is less than ideal. Instead of doing a traditional AK-74U build, one of the best ways to mitigate this is to build your AK-74U and just put the regular ammo in there. Don't worry about the ammo conversions at all. And while your recoil will be higher than the proper SMG type build, your lethality and range will be maintained so that you can take advantage of the snappiness, and you now have a snappy and very lethal weapon that just has horrible recoil that you have to control, which seems like a more fair trade in my opinion. The RPK build of this weapon, with the RPK stock, the heavier barrels, and the giant drum mag, will slow down your aim down sights and sprint out time a lot. It makes your weapon a lot slower. It's kind of a half LMG at this point, but in my opinion, this is one of the best ways to use the AK, and I think it's super powerful with this type of kitting. What the RPK build does is it allows you to have much less recoil, and your bullets will typically travel faster with these barrels, and you will also... and the shake will be so stable that you can hit people at long ranges. So the RPK builds perform very, very well in ground war due to the long range engagements. In most regular maps, 6v6 or 20v20 in Call of Duty, the engagements aren't so long where you would really get a lot of benefit out of the RPK. And I would like to say moving around, but I know a lot of the community likes to set up Claymore and proxy mine fortresses. If you plan to move around, the RPK is probably going to be too slow for you to beat these M4 and MP7 users. However, due to the super long range engagements in ground war and your opportunity to set up and not be punished for being slow, it's a really good weapon that oddly outperforms LMGs in my opinion, because it's not as bad a hipfire, not as bad a aim down sights, not as bad a sprint out, or none of the slow stuff that usually punishes you as an LMG. So you effectively get to be an LMG user in ground war with slightly higher mobility, and I always got my best gameplay out of the RPK variation of this weapon. There's one kind of weird thing that I did while I was playing with this. I tried to build a DMR out of it by adding a sniper scope onto the weapon and putting it into select fire mode and just kind of tap, 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 tap. It was just a little bit too slow and a little bit less reliable. However, when I took my very basic RPK style build and I just slapped a sniper scope on that too and maybe traded out the RPK stock for something that gives me a little bit more recoil control, I found it to be surprisingly strong. I was actually able to do pretty well on Piccadilly with this build of all things because I was able to pick people out of the buildings at ranges that they wouldn't expect. Now the downside is this is a ridiculously slow handling build and it will give you the sniper glint, but it's one to take a look at. It's really not so bad. And if you're a patient player, it really might fit your playstyle. In my opinion, the classic AK builds, like you put a foregrip, a dot, and a suppressor do work, but they're suboptimal in Modern Warfare. There are better builds than the classic same AK that you've used for ages and ages, so let's talk about those. In my opinion, the most versatile setup is to add the no stock. I guess it's funny that no stock counts as an attachment. It's like a negative attachment, so that you have faster aim down sights and sprint out time. Ranger foregrip will reduce your vertical recoil, which you got a little bit worse there from the no stock. The stippled grip will further increase your aim down sights and sprint out times. Compensator helps with recoil. Sleight of hand will help you reload very, very fast, and you just use the basic iron sights. What this effectively does is gives you a much snappier, faster responding AK-47 that will overall have slightly less recoil than the base version and reload quickly. It's pretty much a pure bonus weapon when you set it up this way, and no, it won't compete with a lot of the M4 builds, but a lot of people build their M4 to just be super accurate lasers, so oddly you can outreact and snap aim and kind of murder people with this weapon much more so than you would expect. So for core modes, 6v6, 20v20, stuff like that, this is the setup that I would recommend. There are a lot of crazy AK-47 setups out there. This is one of the most customizable weapons in the entire game, so in my opinion, you should make this weapon your own. It really should be your weapon. You should customize it the way you want to, because the AK you can turn into almost anything. It can literally be an SMG, an assault rifle, a light machine gun, a DMR, a fast weapon, a slow weapon. You can do almost anything with it. So take the time to study the gun and make something really nice out of it that suits your play style, and go punish some M4 boys. Alright guys, that's all for this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.